Right, we're just prepping out live stream. So I can't transfer this to the WTC host. We'll have to just press on. You just confirm it's live. Right, it is. Right, okay, Terry, do you want to begin when you're ready?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The first item is apologies for absence, and I've received an apology from Councillor Bolsevich. The next item is election of chairman for the municipal year 2020-21. Do I have a nomination, please?
Yeah, I propose Steve Tierney, the chairman.
Seconder, please. Councillor Lynn. Any other nomination?
Oh, yeah, I'll just second Steve. Terry, thanks.
Yeah, I've got that, Andrew. So any other nominations? In the absence of any other nominations, Councillor Tierney is duly elected as chairman of the committee for the municipal year 2020-21. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciated. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 3, to receive members' declarations of disclosable pecuniary, non-disclosable pecuniary, or non-pecuniary interests in relation to any agenda item. Does anyone have any such disclosures? No? Okay, thank you. So noted. Moving on to agenda item 4, which is the election of the vice chairman for the municipal year 2020-2021. Do I have any nominations? Councillor Lynn?
Yeah, I'm happy to nominate Billy again.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Ketchingham, I think, had the edge there. So any other nominations? Okay, all in favour? Thank you very much. In that case, well done, Councillor Vackley. You are vice chairman again for your sins. So moving on to agenda item 5, to concern for signature by the chairman when possible, so obviously not right now, the minutes of the meeting of the Wisbech Castle Management Committee held on the 13th of January 2020. And doesn't it seem like a long time ago? Does anybody have any comments or corrections to make in regards to those minutes? No, in that case, are you happy for me to adopt them as a true representation of the meeting?
Yeah.
Thank you. Gary, you proposed that. Trevor seconds. All in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Terry, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6, refurbishment, enhancement and operation of Wisbech Castle, the main building, outbuildings and the garden. The chairman to report on works which have been undertaken are planned for the near future, as well as operational aspects in relation to Wisbech Castle, including proposed paving and turfing works to the castle gardens. Actually, sorry, Terry, I've got the agenda I've actually got in front of me. It was the draft one. Was there any changes made to it after that?
No, only that we specifically mention the paving and turfing works.
Good. Okay, so I've done that, so that's fine. Excellent. Okay then, so thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to have a little bit of a rant, I'm afraid, before I begin, but it is in regards to the operational matters with the castle. So first of all, I'd like to remind members of the committee that when the idea of Wisbech Town Council saving the castle was proposed, I was against the idea. Many others weren't, but I was. And I wasn't against the idea because I didn't value the building, which I did, and I do. It's the heart of Wisbech. It's a historic gem whose sites the town grew from and around. I was opposed to the idea because, as I told colleagues at the time, there are some people in this town for whom nothing is ever good enough. No matter how good you do with a project, they will criticise, snarl and sneer from their holes, and you could deliver the most perfect project ever, and they would find a way to hate it and to pour scorn on it. And none of those are present in this committee, I'm proud to say. I believe that time and evidence has proven me right, for while a huge number of local people have enjoyed the castle and love the castle, this tiny handful spit and hiss and are sadly enabled by a section of the local press. I raise this because in this last week, this has resulted in the outright onslaught of one of our most dedicated volunteers. A volunteer who loves the castle and has poured sweat and tears and toil into it for years now. A volunteer who has done absolutely nothing wrong, but has nonetheless seen his private life bandied around the town, who's had his private life banded around and had his private business turned over for public view. And not even his real private life, although that would be bad enough, but a fantasy version of his private life, which has little bearing on reality. And it is not acceptable. Our team of volunteers give their time and energy to the castle, and we all benefit from that every day. They are selfless, hardworking, and ask nothing in return, except maybe a little respect. Respect which is denied to them by these individuals who think that it's fine to root around in their private affairs that have nothing to do with the castle or the council and are none of their business. It is not acceptable. So let me make a few things clear, since some people clearly struggle to follow the facts. 1. Our voluntary caretaker has permission to stay overnight in the castle if he thinks it necessary for the generous and voluntary role he performs. He does not need to ask permission. He does not need to justify his decision to some puffed up, self-imposed judge and jury who's never stepped foot in the castle or lifted even one finger to help as a volunteer. The permission was given by this committee, and we value the work done by our caretaker, and we know full well that he does not abuse his position in any way. Quite the opposite. He gives relentlessly of his time and energy on our behalf. Number 2. Although individuals did live permanently in the castle during the county council's time in charge, nobody has ever moved into the castle while Wisbech Town Council are in charge. And should we ever want them to, that would be put to this committee. Various staff have spent the night in the castle when we've had ghost hunts, overnight charity events and other such things, and I expect they will again. Our caretaker has spent long hours in the castle, including overnights, as part of his role, working late, starting early, including overnights, and helping resolve the issues with the new security system. He's allowed and entitled to do so, as the clock can confirm, and we have absolute faith in him. 3. The personal private living arrangements, movements and spending decisions of our volunteers is nobody's business but their own. I'm not sure if I can possibly say this loudly and clearly enough. It is none of your business, Councillor David Patrick, whether our volunteers choose to move house or stay in other people's houses, and if you think some law has been broken, phone the police. Otherwise, it's none of your affair. If you are not a key holder for the castle, this is number 4, you have no right to enter the castle. As a councillor, unless you are a key holder, your rights are the same as any other member of the public in this respect. The castle staff do not have to let you in when you whistle or shout demands at them. And if you are rude or harass our volunteers, they have every right to refuse you entry, and they will do so. It is not acceptable that our volunteers are made to feel bad, intimidated, threatened, or harassed. It's simply not acceptable. Sorry, I've lost my place. So, if you have a question about the castle, the correct person to ask is me or the clerk. You might not like the answer that I give or the clerk gives, but you'll get an honest answer and you'll have to live with it. Our volunteers, even the ones who are also councillors, are not there for you to prey upon, to make false accusations about, or to run to the local rag and spew your nastiness to. Today, I had to send our volunteers home because some individuals felt it acceptable to hang around outside, the same individuals making accusations against volunteers. Now, it may be that those individuals are the heroes of their own stories and are sure that they're in the right. But you should understand, if you were one of them, that your behaviour was seen as both intimidating and harassing to some of our volunteers. And our team has been made to feel uncomfortable and bullied. Now, perhaps you did not mean that to be the case, giving you, the best of judgment. But if so, perhaps you should reflect on how your odd behaviour looks to others next time. If you have an issue, the buck stops here with me as the chairman, and you should bring your issues to me and stop skulking around in the shadows and whispering like school kids. In regards to my actual report, we have obviously been shut to the public during the COVID pandemic. Our volunteers, socially distancing and within all government guidance, have continued to beaver away, working hard to repair, renovate and improve the castle and grounds. Huge amounts of work have been done in the gardens. The new security system is up and running, if a little temperamental. We have a wedding taking place in August, which I'm happy to answer questions on, a last-minute affair that we've tried to step in and rescue. The Fendick room has completely and spectacularly been refurbished and looks amazing, and we can't wait for you all to see it. Other volunteers have recently been in as part of our big clean-up, doing the more mundane jobs around the castle. Amongst other things, I cleaned the loos, which was delightful. Although COVID caused us all to cancel thousands of pounds worth of bookings, I'm pleased to report that those bookings are now beginning to come back in, albeit a little way into the future. So, otherwise, I think things are going pretty well, other than this kind of last thing that caused my rant. And it did mention in this that I was going to talk about the paving and turfing works to the castle gardens. So the rear of the garden, which isn't the main bit that you see most of the time, which currently looks incredible, beautiful, but the rear part of the garden, which has historically been kind of shrubs and weeds and overgrown, and there were also poisonous plants there. Our volunteers have worked hard turning the back part of that over. Their intention is to put that to lawn, and then the area which is currently paved irregularly and rather dangerously, if you like, for people who are moving around, we want to repave that so it's smooth and looks really great all around the fountain, and also provides a safe place for people working on the bee project. So then we hope to frame the bee project, which is currently just a bunch of hives, but we want to put a big sign and like posts either side of that, so we frame the project itself with information for people about what the bees do and how they work, and just generally about the beekeeping in general. And our bees have begun to produce rather a lot of honey, which is also quite exciting, and I'm happy to take questions on that as well. So that's pretty much my whole update for item 6. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Andy.
Hi, thanks for that, Chairman. I'm not going to make a comment about the initial part of your opening speech. I mean, that's a matter that I'm just not interested in at all in that respect. But one of the things, funny enough, I had a meeting today with a resident of my ward at Waterleys, and one of the concerns they're talking about is how accessible it is to get around the gardens, etc., for disabled people, mainly wheelchairs. And clearly, by doing some paving, etc., that's probably going to make that a lot easier. The other issue that was spoken about was obviously disabled access into the castle itself, inside the building. Now, obviously, we appreciate that the building, you can't make any structural changes to it, given its listing, and so you're limited in what you can do. But have you got any plans for the future in relation to maybe making it wheelchair accessible, or what we can do, just so I can go back and give some feedback on it? That'd be great.
Yes, thank you. If the constituent is the one I think it is, I have already answered their questions, but I'm happy to answer them. It's good to get the opportunity to answer them publicly. So we knew when we took the castle on that there were real challenges in regards to disability access, challenges that the County Council never managed to resolve, and that's because they're very difficult to resolve. And we are exempt from a number of regulations in regards to disability access because of the listed status of the building. But nonetheless, we want to do everything we can because the building's for everyone. And I should stress, we've had lots of disabled people come through the building, use the building in various ways, and we've done everything we can to help them. So the issue is that there's no way to reach the upper 2 floors if you've, say, got a wheelchair or severe mobility access. And it's not an easy one to solve. We've had experts look at it, and we've had a good think about it. And at the moment, we can't think of a solution, but we're open to ideas. The problem is the steepness of a ramp that will be required is way above the steepness a wheelchair can get up. And the only way to do it will be to kind of wrap a ramp around or sort of zigzagging up the building, which would destroy the look of the listed building, would never get planning permission, and would look terrible. But it's tragic because it's such a lovely building and we want everyone to see it. We want everyone to share in it. So what we're doing in the short term is we hope to install a disabled toilet by the cafe. That will be a start. The ghost passage entrance, we're going to pave that. Then we're going to create a new gentler ramp down into the garden and a paved area around the garden to the back door, and then have a portable ramp in the back door. So you will be able to access the gardens, the upper gardens, the cafe, and the downstairs floor, which includes the Clayton room, the kitchens, the bothy, a lot of the interesting bits. And we're even thinking about whether there's some way that we can make the vaults accessible. Now that's obviously a challenge too, because whilst you could make a ramp to take a wheelchair, for instance, in there, and we have done it. In fact, one time we helped a wheelchair person use the place. In some ways, their head would be lower, they'd be a bit safer. But the irregular nature of the floor creates challenges. And we're thinking about all these things. We are a small voluntary team with a limited budget, and some of these ideas are fairly big spender ideas, but we're determined to do them, to make every possible access that we can. And we're always open to thinking about new ways for people to suggest how we can do better.
Yeah, thanks for that, Steve. Basically, you've just confirmed exactly what I was saying to this this person today. Is that obviously you can only work within certain parameters, but quite clearly the castle and the team are moving forward to make it as accessible where it can be accessible as best as possible. And I just think that'd be fantastic because it does open it up for more people. And if we can do that, then that's all for the good. So thank you ever so much. Appreciate it.
I would just add that we did one of the events we've had previously was a lady who came for her 90th birthday at the castle, and she had mobility issues, as did a number of her family. And we managed to put a party on in the lower floor of the castle for her. And she was absolutely made up with that because she'd had her 70th birthday at the castle as well 20 years ago. So it just it was a really nice day, actually. Any other questions or Councillor Tibbs?
On mute. There we go. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. So I'd like to start off by saying, you know, I've got nothing but respect for our hardworking volunteers, and quite frankly, I am disgusted by the actions of a few individuals regarding the harassment of them. Some of these people put in hundreds of man hours over the last couple of years, and to say that I was angered and saddened doesn't even begin to get anywhere near where I'm feeling about this at the moment. On a later note, I was wondering if you could expand on the wedding we've got planned.
Yeah, I'd love to. So we weren't gonna do anything. Obviously, we're staying close to the public at the moment. We hope to open for a few days in August, but it all depends on what the government says day to day, because first we thought it would be okay, then they start talking about everyone wearing masks, and we've just got to wait and see, really. But we do still hoping to open for a few key days in August, and then with a view to proper opening in September. But we had no plans for a wedding, and then we were approached by a couple who another venue had told, we can't let you in, we can't let you have your wedding, and they paid for everything, they'd organised everything. People are travelling from all over to come to this wedding, and plans have been made, and it's very difficult for them to cancel. And they said, is there anything we can do? And we said, well, you know, there's a lot of COVID restrictions in place, but with the government that's just said you can have a wedding with 30 people. So if you've only got 30 people, maybe we can help. And they said, well, we have only got 30 people. So stupidly, we said, oh, we'll give it a go then. Anyway, it then turns out that things are much more complicated than they appear. And the government, I think, rushed through this idea that 30 people can have a wedding without rolling back some of the previous restrictions that were in place. And the 2-metre exclusion zone has to be in every direction around a person. So if you've got a room, say the size of the Fendick room, it's all very well saying you can have 30 people in there, but actually you can get about 6 people in there, it would initially seem. How can you have a wedding with 6 people? And we had to talk with them, and we've gone through the regulations with a tooth comb. We had to submit plans and safety plans and risk assessments to the registrars, but the registrars came back this week, or actually last week, and said, we're happy with your plans now, you can proceed. And the way we're doing it, I don't want to give too much away because obviously it's a private wedding, but there'll be a limited number of people, 2 metre spaced in the main area where the wedding takes place. Then the speakers will be on the balcony, and there'll be a microphone for the couple. And then the rest of the guests will be socially distanced into the garden under marquees, and we'll hear the broadcast from the speakers. And when the wedding happens, hopefully in the garden, they'll all cheer. And when I said to the bride, you know, this is going to be an unusual wedding, she pointed out, well, also a memorable one. And, you know, we've done everything we can, and they seem very pleased with the plans, and we're going to push out the boat. And by the way, we welcome volunteers on the day to help us manage it from a staff point of view. So if anyone's free, do chip in. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll move on to agenda item 7. Events, activities and bookings at Wisbech Castle, Chairman's report. So not much to add beyond what I've already said, except that we've got a pretty full raft of ghost hunts now booked for the end of the year. Now they're speculative, because if the COVID situation changes or the government returns some of the previous conditions, we'll have to change plans, and so will they, and they know that. But tentatively, people are beginning to book again. We've got a raft of ghost hunts. We've got some other events being questioned about. Some of the things that we thought were cancelled in September, they're now coming back and saying, well, maybe we'll do it. Let's just see what happens next month. So it's good news, I think, on the whole. I can't give you the days we're going to open in August yet, because we're going to decide next week. And then we're going to do an announcement on the Facebook page. Once we know what volunteers we've got, some of our volunteers are still socially isolating at the moment. But once we know who we've got and what the situation is, we'll be able to tell you more. I'll take any questions on it, though. No questions? Okay then, agenda item 8, projects and initiatives. Chairman to report on the situation regarding projects undertaken to date and planned for the future, including the provision in the rear of the Wisbech Garden of a miniature railway, identified in minute W1018 as a potential project for Wisbech Castle. So you will all remember that we have talked about this pretty much since the outset. And it's no secret that one of our volunteers is an enthusiast, the imagination of lots of guests who we've mooted the idea to just to see what they would think about it. And the idea is that based on the old Wisbech tram line, we will set up I'm sorry, I'm not technical, so I don't know what the gauge is, but it's a ride-on train line that runs around the rear of the garden, the bit that we plan to have flower beds and lawn on. And there'll be a little station near the bees, and then the train will go around the back of the garden to the back of the cafe, and then it will go back to place. And people will be able to ride it either very cheaply or free, depending on what's decided down the line. We'd certainly like to make it so that kids in town can come and have fun, and families can sit in the cafe while the kids have a go on the train. And it's in keeping with several aspects of the castle. It's in keeping with the idea of the castle being central to our history, because of course the Wisbech tram line is central to our history, and we'll be trying to reflect that and have information plaques about it and model the little train that you ride on after it as best we can. And second, education, because we will also have educational information about how such things work for kids when they come in, and they can learn about how it used to work in Wisbech, and hopefully how it will work in future if the new Wisbech train link were to happen, which is obviously a related and similar project. Now, I won't say this isn't an expensive task, but where these exist in the country, they're a big draw for tourists, and local people enjoy them very much. And we want to make this primarily key for local people, a place to come and have fun. There's already a lot to do at the castle, and we're adding more every day, but we think this will be an extra thing to add. We're proposing an initial budget of about £10,000. We don't expect to spend anything like that, but that's a kind of worst case scenario. A lot of the work and the putting together is going to be done by our volunteers if we go ahead. So the primary purchase is for the engine and the carriages and the pieces to make the rail. And that's my proposal. Happy to take any questions or comments on it. Anybody? David. Oh, you, Andy, but David first.
I suppose the initial question, Steve, is it's going to cost approximately £10,000. How do we propose to raise that amount of money for this project?
Well, I'd like to explore whether we could use the loan to pay for it, because that is for improvements to the castle, but we'd have to take advice on whether this is the correct sort of improvement. If it's not, then we would pay for it from our general budget, which is quite dramatically underspent this year because we haven't been able to do very much. So what we would normally spend our budget on, but this is still a big chunk out of it. It's half our budget. So, it's not insignificant. I think that's for the committee to decide. I don't propose this to happen next week. I just want to know whether it's worth pursuing the idea, knowing that the committee broadly supports it. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned that in other places that this has been something along these lines has been a big draw, and obviously it's something that the people like. I mean, one of the questions I had when I first read the agenda was, what benefit do we think it will bring? And obviously, I think your opinion is that it will be a draw to bring more people into the grounds and use facilities. I have a concern in relation to the level of cost it will be, and I would be happier to sort of nail that down a bit further before agreeing to move forward with it. I don't dislike the idea, but as I say, I just think it's quite a hefty sum that we're going to be paying out to do it, especially if, I mean, we don't know where we're going to be in 6 months' time or what's happening at the moment, the way things are going. And as you said earlier, things change on a daily basis. To me at the moment, it just seems like quite an expensive amount of money to spend when we don't know what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be moving and whether it will actually bring any benefit into us. I mean, I suppose it's if you don't do something, you'll never know until you try it. I get that bit, but I just feel it's quite expensive. It's just my initial views.
So I think that's an absolutely fair challenge. And I guess my view on it is that we spend significantly more than that every year putting up and taking down Christmas decorations for a couple of weeks. And this is something that will be available pretty much all year round for local residents to come and enjoy. And we have some people, some kids, if you like, in town who live below the poverty line. And this is something that we can offer to them to come and their families come and enjoy the day, and for them to come and have fun inexpensively or potentially free, depending on how we decide what we decide to do with it. You know, that we can offer people to come and do something for Wisbech, for the young people of Wisbech primarily, but there are lots of train enthusiasts and tram enthusiasts too who will enjoy this. And yes, to the layman, these always sound like eye-watering amounts, and certainly when compared to something like, you know, a flower bed, they are. But this is a permanent long-term addition with very little ongoing expense, a bit of maintenance. As long as the staff regularly look after it, which they will, there's very little in the way of maintenance involved, very little in the way of power involved. So it's one of those things where the expenses to us won't be huge once we've got past the initial outlay, but it adds another thing that is wonderful at the castle, another reason to come, another type of person who will come and enjoy what goes on there, and will then be exposed to everything else the castle has to offer, including the history and the vaults and, you know, the beekeeping and all the other things we're adding. Anyone else? Councillor Tibbs?
Yeah, I have to admit that when I first heard about the train, I was not a fan, as I'm sure you can remember the conversations with me about it. But I have warmed to the idea over time. I think that it's something that we should certainly explore. So look into the costings and keep moving forward with it, because the more I think about it, the more I like it. And the reason for that is because you've got the main house, which is a draw and draws a very certain type of person to the castle. You've got the main front garden, yet again, same thing. When I say front garden, I mean the one behind the house, but at the front. And, you know, that draws yet more different type of person. But then you've got that back garden. And in my mind's eye right now, and I mean no disrespect to the hard work that the volunteers have put into it, it's a bit bleak back there. And it would be nice to have something to draw in more people. And if those people are young people, all the better.
Thank you, Councillor Tibbs, and I agree with that. I would add that a lot of plants have been planted in that back garden already, and 2 new flower beds. And when the lawn goes down, it will look a lot less bleak. But you're right, when you initially turn over a large area of scrub, it does look a bit bleak. And I know some people have made hay with that already, no pun intended. Any other comments or questions? Dave?
I tend to agree with Gary. And also Andy as well. I mean, we need to look at it, and I think we should take it forward so that we can actually get sort of full costings in that before we actually make a proper decision. But I think it's, excuse the pun, full steam ahead.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, with your permission, is proceed as though we're going to do it at no greater a cost than I have proposed, but hopefully significantly less, but not to actually implement it until the final cost is known and agreed by this committee. Is that acceptable?
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Okay, all right. So I'll cause that. I'm proposing that. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. And all in favour? And Billy, are you in favour of this, or are you against?
hang on. I'll find my finger in a minute. Yes, I'm in favour.
Okay, thank you. I think that was unanimous then, Terry.
Yes, it was unanimous, Chairman. It was unanimous.
Appreciate your time. I think that's pretty much everything. Unless anyone has any other comments to make, then I think we're going to call it a day. Are you okay with that, Terry?
Absolutely, yep.
Right, thank you very much for attending, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you.
Right.
Right.
Bye.